us. All right. Well, welcome everyone. We are really excited for today. Our special guest, Jarrett Ransom, finding and living in your zone of genius. So again, as you're coming in, let us know who you are. Tell us where you're at. What's your weather? Or, maybe you have a burning question for Jarrett, because I've been really looking forward to today's conversation. So with that, just a few housekeeping things. We're recording right now. You will receive the slides and the recording after our event today. So please know that we'll share that with you. And then as you have questions, there's kind of two ways. Obviously, you can go ahead and comment. We always have a really good community here in the chat box. Go ahead and use that. But if you have a specific question that you want us to make sure we get addressed, use that Q&A tab, and we'll make sure to answer those questions as we go. And follow along, tag us, Bloomerang, as well from a social perspective. So just really quick, my name is Ann Fellman. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at Bloomerang. And just really quick, I don't want you to go there now, but Bloomerang, we are all about supporting nonprofit organizations and fundraising through our donor management platform or donor relationship management. So that's what we do. You can learn all about it after today's webinar, but that's not what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk with Jarrett, and I'm really excited about what she's going to teach us. So Jarrett, just a little bit about Jarrett. If you were not familiar with her, she's actually, I don't know, world famous probably, Jarrett, with your daily, the nonprofit show. But Jarrett, she's known as the nonprofit nerd. If you've met her, maybe she's handed you those nerd glasses. Jarrett resides in Phoenix, and she started her career back in the 2009 from a consulting perspective, working exclusively with nonprofits throughout the nation. And under her leadership and guidance, she's had teams across the nation raise millions of dollars every year to support and sustain their missions. Jarrett has helped create sustainable, I think this is really important, sustainable fundraising strategies for startup to multi-million-dollar organizations. So no matter what your size, and I think especially with the topic today, you're going to learn a ton from Jarrett. She's the president and CEO of the Raven Group, and she consults with nonprofits again to help them see through that future of their organization. Again, that sustainability piece. So not just immediate needs, but how you plan for several years down the road by providing strategic planning and looking at that 3, 5, 10 years and beyond. So again, her other kind of vein of fame is the nonprofit show, and she's a co-host, so you can pretty much see her on a daily basis. Or she brings, I love it. They have a fabulous conversational style, dynamic energy, enthusiasm to the weekly show, and they feature nonprofit thought leaders and topics from around the globe. So you should definitely check that out as well. But Jarrett, a very warm welcome, and thank you so much for spending time with us today. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thanks to all of you joining me for today. I know that we have many things to choose from. We have a lot of options in our day, and I'm just honored that I can be of service to each and every one of you, whether you're joining live or watching recorded. So again, thank you so much. And what a lovely welcome. And I had the great pleasure of meeting you in Vegas for the AFP Icon Conference, where you're right, I was hosting live the nonprofit show. So it is the nation's only live national nonprofit webcast. So for any of you that want to look it up, thenonprofitshow.com, you can find that each and every weekday. We produce an episode, and it's live, much like this, and recorded, and you can find it on many other platforms, so we can share more about that later. Thank you to Bloomerang, of course, for being a fantastic sponsor and supporter of the nonprofit show. We have now almost 600 episodes. So that in and of itself, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. We started in March of 2020. So again, I'm very casual. I love having conversations. I love nerding out, as you can tell, even with my logo here. Total nonprofit nerd. I'm not offended by that. I wear that as a badge of honor. I saw Sean, a guest on here, says, that Sean's also a nonprofit nerd. So welcome, my fellow nerds. I'm really excited to get into this juicy conversation. And before we even open these digital doors, Ann and Steph and I were talking about the conversation today, and Steph was being so kind, messaging me saying, I'm already so inspired. So I hope that I can bring that out of each and every one of you so that you can leave today's conversation with some inspiration and the ability to take some inspired action. So if anyone's interested in getting in touch with me, I'm always here to be of service to my fellow nonprofit friends and leaders across the nation and truly across the globe. I do reside in Arizona. I'm actually here in Utah for the summer, Park City, and grew up in South Carolina. So many of you that were saying South Carolina, again, hello to my home state friends. It's really cool to see so many people here. So I've been consulting since 2009, just as Ann shared in the intro. And again, thank you so much for that. 2009, I was director of development for an organization in Phoenix, Arizona that was a $21 million agency. So a really large nonprofit. It was statewide. And my team and I think at the max, we had 3, maybe 4 staff members. So I've really been in a lot of small, medium, sometimes larger organizations. So I really want you to think about this conversation and this topic today, regardless of the size of your organization. And this can be used both professionally and personally. Okay, so that might just set your hair on fire. But really what I share, there's no boundaries as to when it starts and when it ends. This is a practice, finding and living in your genius zone, that is relatable and transferable 24/7, right? So no matter what you're doing, where you're going. I also have these conversations with my son. I was sharing earlier, he's 11. And we talk about, like, hey buddy, like, where do you think you excel? And where do you think you just naturally, groove in some way, shape, or form? So it's really cool to have these conversations with our young ones as well. So finding and living in your zone of genius, I'm going to go through this conversation. Ann and Steph are going to moderate not only the chat box for the Q&A. So again, I'm very casual. So if there's any question, feel free to ask it. I will answer it to the best of my ability. And if I don't have the answer, I promise that I will get back to you. So moving right into the conversation, I want everyone to walk away after this conversation, again, live or recorded, truly knowing their zone of genius. Now you might think, this is only an hour long and we're already 10 minutes into it, right? So now we have 50 minutes. How are we going to figure this out? Don't worry, I'm here. I'm going to hold your hand through the entire conversation. I do ask if you have pen, paper, pencil, anything that you might want to jot down some notes on. That might be very helpful. I won't ask to see them, so it doesn't matter what your chicken scratch might look like. But identifying your zone of genius, one of the things that I want to share is truly there are 4 zones of genius, and we're going to move into this. But I also really want to focus on people's performance and how you can create this zone of genius with the combination of your talents, your skills, and your strengths. So you see the star right in the middle of this Venn diagram. As a nerd, I love Venn diagrams. So I, of course, had to put this in here. But looking at your talents, your skills, your strengths, and I'm going to provide a very brief definition for each of these words. So looking at your talents, this is an innate ability that cannot be taught. Okay, so for instance, maybe you, not me, maybe you are incredible with numbers. So this is an innate ability that cannot be taught. For example, maybe you're really good at numbers, right? I always joke and say I'm not a numbers person. Even my calculator gives me wrong math. So that's how good I am with that. Moving into your skills, this is a competency that can be taught. It absolutely can be taught. For example, knowing how to use the software system Excel backward and forward, or perhaps Bloomerang backward and forward. So truly learning something that can be taught. And one of the things I want to mention for that, workforce development right now in our nation is a really big topic. So how are we developing our workforce? And when it comes to the skills section, I just want you to know this can be taught. So as you think about perhaps openings in your organization, or you're looking to bring a new person onto the team, think about what can be taught. Because I'm going to tell you, Bloomerang, many other donor database systems can absolutely be taught if you hire the right person. And then we're going to go back to strengths. So the bottom left here on the circle, this is anything that gives you energy. So a strength is anything that gives you energy. Now, I always like to bring this truly to, what is something that brings you joy? Marie Kondo, right? She has this amazing program that comes with, decluttering your home and truly keeping everything that sparks joy in your life. Very similarly, I want you to think the same way about how you spend your days. Are you spending your days with things that bring you joy, things that light you up, things that add energy to your life, to your day, to that task and responsibility? And if not, I'm going to help you start to think about how you might move that off your plate. So that's going to be a lot of fun, but I do like to bring up these three because it's really important to see where this lies: talent, skills, strengths. And if you can find something, that kind of crosses over these three, that might be your zone of genius, but we're going to talk more about that. So one thing I do want to share is that everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by the ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. I don't know about you, but I've never, ever, ever, ever seen a fish climb a tree, right? If I did, I would wonder, where am I? But anyway, just really knowing that everybody truly has their zone of genius, and it's very unique for each and every one of us. The other thing I like to share with this specifically is that we often, many of us, if not all of us, discount what we say before we even say it. So let me give you an example of this. I'm no expert, Anne, but what I just heard is that 30% of all fundraising dollars come in Q4 of every year. Again, I'm no expert, so I don't really know what I'm saying. Why? Why do we do that, right? So that's already discounting what we're saying, what we're sharing, and taking us down a level to say, I'm no expert, right? This is this is not who I am and what I do. So again, throughout today's conversation, what I want to do for each and every one of you is to allow yourself permission. I allow you, for any of you, I know myself, I need permission to do things where it's like, well, I can't do that. I cannot think of me as an expert in X, Y, and Z field. You can. I'm giving you permission. I'm asking you to find your confidence, build your confidence, and to truly step into your zone of genius. So one thing that I want to call out, Anne, if you would be so willing, before we open the digital doors, you and I were exchanging a brief conversation, and you had shared about how you, I think, made a presentation. Someone sent you a Slack message. Would you mind repeating that for our viewers today?
Sure. So, a lot of us probably give presentations, and one thing that I have to continually practice is when someone pays you a compliment. Hey, I loved your presentation. I love the point that you were really transparent, blah, 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 blah. In my old self, I would go, oh yeah, it was terrible. I could have done better. You really like that? Versus saying and so I didn't respond that way, thankfully. How I did respond, but I had to go, okay, thank you. What did you like about it? And just that act of training yourself when people pay you a compliment or tell you that they like something that you did is actually receive that and then ask them what you liked about it. Why? What made it good this time? And versus the discounting it point that Jarrett was just making.
That is so important. And thank you for that, because that's a very practical example that I know we can all probably resonate with, either on the receiving end or the giving end. And one of the things I had shared with you, Anne, is when we do say, oh gosh, it was horrible, I could have done a better job at X, Y, and Z, we're actually negating the compliment that the person attempted to give us. So we're actually doing a disservice by this person by saying, don't give me that compliment. I clearly don't deserve it. So a lot of the self-talk truly comes into play when it comes to your zone of genius. And thank you, Anne, for sharing, because that is such a practical example that I think, again, we've either done it ourselves or we've been on the other end and we've had someone discount, that to say, oh gosh, it was horrible. Did you hear me mess up on so-and-so? No, clearly we didn't. So own your awesomeness, right? Like truly own your awesomeness and your feedback to say, thank you. What did you like about the presentation, or what really resonated with you gives you an opportunity to gain additional feedback from your audience. So thank you for that. So now we're going to dive deep into the meat and potatoes. These are the two questions that I ask, and we're going to put our zone of genius into action starting right now. Again, earlier I said, okay, it's an hour, we now have 50 minutes. Time's ticking and I still don't know my genius zone. Well, there's two questions that I want you to think about right now. And again, either live or recorded. And for those of you that are brave and courageous and want to step into the arena, as Brene Brown would say, I'm going to invite you to chat this, right? Like if you're willing to share some of your answers, I would be honored to have you share this in community. I believe that when we speak big, bold statements in community, it actually helps us to practice increasing our confidence and stepping into our confidence. So moving into two questions that are going to help us identify our zone of genius. The very first one is, what do you love to do? It's that simple. What do you love to do? And I'm just going to give you some time to think about this. Hopefully you can write this down. Does not have to be business. It could be personal. It could be something that you're not having the time to do right now. So maybe you love knitting and you just don't have the time for that. I love soccer. I love playing soccer. I've not played in a long time, right? So again, for those of you that might be joining us and are willing to share this openly in community, I would love to hear what you identify as what you love doing. So Anne, do we have anyone brave and bold sharing?
We have a lot of brave and bold sharers. Love helping others, love being creative, love to create and teach. I love to hike, said Naomi. Denise, love to create, communicate, and share experiences with others. Jennifer says she's a weirdo and that she loves data entry. I love it because there's a sense of accomplishment with that.
Yes.
I love Excel. Nina loves Excel.
Yes.
Hike and explore new places. Love to dance, Hillary. So lots of participation here.
Oh my gosh, this makes me so happy. So what do you love to do? Make a list, keep going. You don't have to stop at 1 or 5, like just let it flow, right? Like just let it go. Don't overthink it, just write it down. I love the data entry. I personally don't love data entry, but I love that you love data entry because that to me tells me there is someone out there for every single task. I presented on this topic before, and I was sharing how I went with a girlfriend to get a pedicure. And the first thing they ask, right, when you walk in is pick your color and then, come sit in the bowl or whatnot. And I'm there with my girlfriend and she's looking at the wall of colors and she goes, I would really like to come and organize these one day. And I'm like, what? That sounds horrible. She loves it. She loves organization, right? Ironically, similar to Marie Kondo, I also have several friends that, are certified in the Marie Kondo system, or I don't know the exact term. So again, I love that you love data entry. I love that you love Excel spreadsheets. Oftentimes I hear from people in this conversation that they love finding efficiencies. That is perfect. And we need this skill set, which is why I said we all have a zone of genius and it's unique for each and every one of us. And thank you to those that were willing to play out loud. I really appreciate and honor that. So the second question, what are you great at doing? Now, this could be a different answer. It could also be the same answer. So what are you great at doing? And similar fashion and form, for those of you that are willing to share, please go ahead and drop that in the chat box. But I really encourage you to just put pen to paper, write this down, make a list. Don't stop at 1 or 5. Just let it go. Don't overthink it. Just think about, what are you great at doing? And here's a trick for those of you that are thinking, I'm really not great at everything. If you were to sit down with your best friend, what would they say you're great at doing? And write that down.
That's what I was gonna say. If you have teammates on the call here, have your teammate post what you're great at doing.
Yes, absolutely. Again, another presentation on this topic, and there was a woman on the conversation, and my example for her is I said, Paula, you are fantastic at knowing resources in the community. Now, she also worked for a community foundation, so she was very rooted in the community. But if I ever wanted to go to her, let's say, I'm really interested in doing some research or talking to some people that are doing co-leadership. Do you know anyone in the community that has examples of co-leadership working well for them or maybe not working well? She would have been my go-to person because she is great at knowing and doing, the connections in the resource. So, and I see that we have several people in the chat box. Would you be willing to share with us what people are great at doing?
Yes. So Sally is great at troubleshooting. Naomi, great at writing magazine stories and profiles, great at speaking. Kay, empathizing, great at empathizing. Eating, Craig is really good at eating.
Me too.
I love it. And I love it. I love to do that too. Let's see what's like, there's some, talking. Nina is really great at talking and working a room. I think I love that. Denise, socializing with a wide demographic of people, unlocking someone else's potential is what Shauna has shared. Catherine is cooking. So a lot of, again, wide range problem solving, managing money, finances from Lori. So encouraging, Lawan is encouraging team members, building and refining structured programs, or public speaking and monitoring. So, or mentoring.
This is fantastic.
Yeah.
I know we're getting more.
Someone said they're great. They're great at saying thank you. Awesome.
That's fantastic. A much needed art form, so this is amazing. I encourage you to continue with this list. I encourage you to take it home, do it with your friends and family. I encourage you to do it with your team. When I say team, I don't always mean those people that are on the payroll. It could be volunteers, it could be interns, it could be board members, committee members. So think about your team in a very holistic type of way. And I encourage you, I challenge you actually to share these two questions, because anytime I hire someone, work with them, even a client, I ask these two questions. What do you love to do? And what are you great at doing? And the reason I do that is because we all know Google, right? It's our best friend. And we can find everyone's highlight reel online. We can see their LinkedIn profile. When we're hiring for an open position, what do they send? A cover letter and a resume. All of this is very scripted. All of this is very structured in how, our societal norms are supposed to be for submitting information. But what I love to do is really get to know the person for the person, and the person for the passion that's behind that person and inside that person. So, and you shared that I started my business in 2009. Truth is, I started my business as a grant writer. So I was let go from this organization where I was chief development officer, $21 million operating budget. I was asked to let my team go. That was again during that economy crisis, 2009, 2010. 6 months later, I was let go. And I literally, it was at the time when I didn't have my own cell phone. I didn't have my own laptop. I walked out with no form of communication. This was back in the day when we didn't have our go-go gadgets everywhere connected to us. And I had no idea what I was going to do. So I looked at my toolbox and I said, okay, what is possible? What is viable? What skill sets do I have? Where do I thrive? What naturally comes to me? Grant writing was something that was very much needed, much like the COVID-19 pandemic we're in. Many organizations during times of crisis often let go of their staff, right? They I don't know the right word, but they just, lay off or a lot of different varieties. And then there tends to be an increase in contract work during that time. So just a heads up there. So what I did is I pivoted before pivot was the word of 2020. And I said, okay, I'm going to be a grant writer. And I love writing. I really do love writing. But as a complete extrovert, like 100% extrovert, maybe even more if that was possible and probable, sitting behind a computer, writing, researching, really was not filling me up. So it was not bringing me joy. And in fact, it was doing just the opposite. It was an energy vampire and it was taking joy away from me. And so I knew then, as much as I love to write, I needed that ability to interact, engage, and really, converse with so many other people. So during this time, and here's the other thing I want to share, your genius zone might change, right? So what I was doing in 2010, writing grants and really, creating a thriving business as a grant writer, I have, as we call, let's sunset that project, right? So that is no longer a service line that I offer, but what I love doing now, if you can't tell, speaking, teaching, educating, like these are the things that bring me so much joy. And even, in my most tired mornings, I am so lit up with the opportunity to do something that brings me so much joy. So for those of you that said things that you think you're a weirdo, and I don't think that you're a weirdo, that's exactly where I want you to harness that energy and harness your skill set to align your day in a form and fashion that hopefully brings more of that. So kudos to all of you for answering those questions. So once you can identify what you love to do, what you're great at doing, if there's a cross section, again, another Venn diagram, if there's a cross section, that might be your zone of genius. So let's move into maybe identifying where you lie within these 4 areas. So again, the 4 zones, we are looking at the zone of incompetence. That's the outside. And those of you that might be looking at the screen, it kind of looks like an egg, a hard-boiled egg turned on its side. So the outside perimeter is your zone of incompetence. Moving one step inside is your zone of competence. One additional step inside is your zone of excellence. So you're still really good at it. And then the core, the very center, which would be the yolk of a hard-boiled egg, is your zone of genius. And this is really where you just feel like you're in your natural state. You are energized after you do this function. It comes very natural to you. Many times, people would say, I cannot believe you do this all day. That seems like it's a lot of work. It's very exhausting. Are you drained at the end of the day? And if your answer is no, I am just the opposite, ding, 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 that's your zone of genius. So for me, again, public speaking, educating, training, that is my zone of genius. Many people, again, have this huge fear of public speaking. I get it. The larger the audience, the better I feel. Seeing over almost 200 people today, like really brings me joy. And knowing that many more will also see this recording, I know that I am being of service to so many people in my zone of genius, and I'm stepping into my confidence and giving you permission to find your own, really excites me. So one of the things that I could ask you to do here in your zone of incompetence, competence, excellence, genius, think about all the ways you spend your day. And now I'm going to ask you to focus strictly on your workday, right? You can do this on your own. Really, I don't care, however you want to do this, but I'm going to encourage you right now during this conversation, let's focus on your workday and where might you put your tasks, your responsibilities into this, I'm going to call it an egg. I'm just going to stick with an egg. So for me, zone of incompetence, I'm going to put, anything that's detail oriented. So reimbursements, mileage expenses. I don't have like the patience for those details. Where am I competent? I'm pretty competent in donor database. I've spent a lot of time in Bloomerang. I'm very competent. I would not say that I'm excellent, but I will say that the online chat is superb and it helps me really excel in that. Where's my zone of excellence? Oh, I could totally nerd out about this. My zone of excellence in this example would definitely be knowing where I want the data to go. So what am I looking for in the donor database? That to me, I think I'm excellent at that. And my genius in this example would also be really looking at finding the trends of the data. So that I walked through an exercise for me, very transparent and vulnerable to say, look, I am really not good at the details. I'm really not good at the minutia. So the person that said, I'm a weirdo and I love databases, like, hitch to my wagon. I want to hitch to yours, because that makes a win-win. That makes a wonderful win-win team. So again, think about this. If you don't do it as an egg, you can do it just kind of lined up in on your paper, and I can share that later. So let's go into this a little bit deeper, because hopefully by now you've written down some of your tasks, some of your responsibilities as it relates to your workday. So again, zone of incompetence. Let me just read this aloud and you can see it on the screen. It's the most obvious misalignment between people and task, and where the lack of talent and skills lie. So in this case, the person should either be retrained. Maybe, if this is someone who's reporting to you and you're realizing they are really not competent in this, perhaps there's an ability to go back and retrain this person for the task. Perhaps you can redistribute in the organization, or ask to find a better match outside the company. One thing I want to share as we go through these 4 zones is right now, and unless you have had your head stuck in the sand, you've heard of the Great Resignation. It's also called the Great Reshuffle, but really throughout our nation, so many individuals looking at where, how, and why they want to spend their time. And I'm all for that. I honor that choice wholly. So we are looking truly across the nation and the globe at this downturn of workforce. So I want you to think about either in your team, right, knowing that you have to accomplish X, Y, and Z, right? Looking at this quarter for your organization or your business, what needs to happen? And if you look at your team, you look left, you look right, and there's no one sitting next to you because you're whittled down to a very skeleton staff, this exercise, this conversation can be very beneficial. So you can then have this exercise and conversation with other people on your team. Again, team is volunteers, staff, really anyone who's willing to be a part of the mission. And you might say, what do you love to do and what are you great at doing? Because someone might actually love mileage reimbursements. Someone might actually love, to do this detail-oriented task. That is something that they love to do. So think about this in terms of the workforce, right? Think about this in terms of if you are bringing someone else on the team, perhaps you assess who's currently on your team, where there are gaps, okay? And then you come up with a list of gaps and you say, not only do we want to hire someone amazing for our culture, but ideally someone who loves and is hopefully excellent, if not a genius, in these other areas. So let's move through. Any questions before I move on? We're going to go through the other zones. There's 4 in total.
Yeah, there's a question I think here from Joe, more about what advice would you give to someone starting their nonprofit career? Joe goes on to say, I transitioned to a full-time fundraising role in 2 weeks and previously a donor relations intern. So someone just getting started out, when you think about, have they discovered all the things that they love or what they're really good at from a work perspective?
No, that's a great question. And again, I think this is all very transferable. So what I would ask you to do is really answer these questions for yourself. What do you love to do? What are you great at doing? Perhaps I know someone wrote on here, like, networking, working the room. That is really good in fundraising because you need to make relationships. You need to deepen the relationship. So think about this, Joe, on the side of, where is your best skill set? Are you a people person? Are you really good at written communication? And just start thinking about all the ways where you naturally excel and how that might fit into the role of the job description or what you've heard for the position or where you want to go in your career. So I think that's really important. I recently hired a retired nurse to be our data admin person, and she is fantastic. And she has 0 fundraising experience, 0. But guess what she does have experience in? Medical charting, right? Bingo, I will take you in a yeah, so it's perfect.
Accuracy.
She is so detailed. She's very accurate. She understands the importance of accuracy, consistency, right? So that Joe is an example where the skills are very transferable. So she is brand new into the nonprofit sector, but she's bringing this skill set of medical charting, high proficiency in databases, high proficiencies with technology, and this can-do attitude. So she's really eager to learn. She's very eager to learn. So that's a good question. Let me move through, if we can now, just the different zones, and then we can loop back to additional questions. But let's keep them going because I want to answer and be of service to each and every one of you. So let's move into that zone of competence. And just, again, really looking at this pretty quickly. These are tasks that people are good at, but other people might be able to do better, right? So I could do mileage reimbursement, but I guarantee you someone's going to do it a little better because they probably have the patience to do it. Work that falls under this category should be delegated or redistributed to people more suited for it. So think about that by way of, who's on your team. Is there someone that's a little bit more competent in this area? Might you be able to delegate or kind of shift? If not delegate, maybe you're able to shift this responsibility. Let's move into excellence. It's clear when someone is talented and skilled in a particular area, but the work doesn't give them energy. That's me in grant writing. I am clearly a really good grant writer. I've brought in millions and millions of dollars for organizations across the nation. It does not give me energy. That's when I called it the energy vampire, right? Like it sucks from me and it drains me. So they may be successful in the short term, but over time they will burn out. And that is truly because they're not being filled up. Their passion is being drained. And it's kind of like, when you kind of like snuff out a candle, right? The flame goes out. And so if I were to continue in grant writing specifically, and exactly what I did, I knew that I hit this burnout and I had to stop. I had to shift this service off my plate and gravitate towards one that I truly just lights me up. Zone of genius. And this is what we're all striving for and why we're here today. This is when all talents, skills, and strengths, they're all aligned. So we are in your zone of genius when you've been able to identify that star of these three: talent, skills, and your strengths. The things in your zone of genius are the things that you are uniquely good at in the world that you love to do. So again, databases, Excel, organizing, eating, all this good stuff, right? Like that is truly our zone of genius. So any questions on that?
No, I think there's just more commentary around like that resonates. When you say, when you're actually doing what you love, when you're doing something that you love, that work is no longer work, but play.
Yes, totally. And really that's where you want to find and be able to identify either, and here's the great thing too, with this being coined the Great Resignation or the reshuffle, right? Many employers are having now stay interviews instead of exit interviews, stay interviews. So now is actually a really good time to go to your supervisor and say, here's the list of all the things that I'm great at doing and I also love doing. Might we consider looking at some of the tasks and responsibilities? Because either A, they're no longer serving you. And if they're not serving you, they're probably not serving the mission and the agency, and they're better suited for someone else. Or B, you're not going to stay there long, right? Because you will get burnt out. But the other thing too, is when it comes to career development, this is a great opportunity to say, I'm great at doing this. I love doing this. And I have this desire to learn, in this other area that I'm not great at, but I have this desire. I would love to learn, would love to experience this. And these are great conversations, especially right now, as many people not only negotiating a new position, but their current position and their current role. So this is a very timely conversation.
Jarrett, absolutely. I actually am having conversations like that with people on my team all the time. It's always like, what brings you energy? What drains your energy?
Yes.
And let's make sure you're doing more of the things that fill your tank versus drain your tank. One, and on that stay interview, this is something that we are actively talking about. We used to think about like hiring and recruiting new employees onto the team or volunteers or whatever. We actually have to do a much better job at recruiting our existing employees or our existing volunteers Or so there's this piece that to keep them coming back and to keep them engaged, we have to recruit them as well, right? To your point.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And again, to say, I mean, I started my business 2009. I've already given you an example where I was no longer fulfilled. So I was able to shift my focus and focus on something that I really love to do. So I'm grateful and privileged to have the ability and stage to educate, train, provide workshops, and speak. I love it. So I also, spend a lot of time teaching other people, empowering them how to be the best grant writer possible, because I'm really good at it. And I want to teach that skill because it is needed for 1.8 million nonprofits in the US. So it's really important to have that. I love the stay interviews, radical concept. Yes, it's a big HR trend right now, human resource trend. So we're really looking at our workforce and how we might retain our rock star staff. And truly that's what we want to do. Okay, so this is another visual for those of you. I'm a big visual learner, but again, on the left-hand side here, getting things off your plate, this is where you're going to list all of your daily activities, every single one of them. So look at your resume, look at your job description, look at your week, how it tends to flow, list everything in your daily activity. Everything on the left-hand side needs to also go to one of the 4 columns in the right. Would you identify that daily activity as something you're good at doing? Maybe you're bad at doing and it drains you. Maybe this is an excellence, area, and it really fills you up. It gives you energy. And the other one is where I should be developing my mastery. So 3 things I should be doing where you can develop your mastery. So for those of you that maybe are timid in asking for money, this might be a great opportunity to say, okay, I am a development manager, specialist, whatever your title might be. I'm really not great at asking for money. However, I know and I am committed to developing my mastery in this area. So what are 3 things that you could be doing in that area? There's so many workshops out there. There's so many models to really elevate your learning and your mastery skills. So even if you don't think that, it is something that you're excellent at, you can still learn it. Just like we talked about the skill, just in general, a skill is a competency that can be taught. It absolutely can be taught. So this is another visual representation to help you with that. When we think about our team, I love this proverb: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I really do believe now more than ever is truly the time to assess who's on our team, who's at the table, who needs to be at the table, what skill sets do we have, where are we harnessing our talent, and where might we recruit the skill sets and the gaps that are missing from our current team. So again, this is a great opportunity when you're looking at people's profiles, you're inviting them in for interviews, you're having stay interviews. Please, I encourage you, I challenge you to ask these 2 questions. What do you love to do and what are you great at doing? And I ask these questions a lot. I also like to do a couple of iterations of it, because what I find, Anne, much like your example, we don't always speak up in a very bold and brave way at first. Maybe we're scared, intimidated, maybe we're worried or embarrassed and just don't want to speak so boldly. So I would be curious to see how someone's list changes over time. I ask this question, really quarterly with my team to say, what are you great at doing? What do you love to do? Realizing it could shift. It could absolutely shift. And I think it's worth, having that information.
Jarrett, one just quick question on that of somebody asked, what if you aren't particularly good at anyone or really great yet at any one thing? What advice would you give them to explore that?
That's a great question. So I'm going to ask you to really focus on where do you naturally navigate, right? So maybe you've heard this term, eat the frog. You have a list of things that you absolutely have to do. And there's this one thing or things that you're procrastinating. And you're just like, I really do not want to do this. And so you might do that first and get it out of your way. But what I would say is, instead of eating the frog, where are the things that, on your list, as I'm looking down, as if I have a list, looking at my list and saying, oh, now I'm excited to do that. I'm going to choose that one first. I'm going to challenge you to say that's probably something that you naturally are really good at doing, because let's be honest, we do tend to navigate and gravitate towards something that might seem easier, might seem less of a load, less of a lift. And that probably is something that you're going to be good at. Now, you might not see yourself as a genius, or that's your zone of genius, or maybe even excellence, but pay attention to how you feel when you do it. Pay attention to how you feel when you see it on your calendar, or you hear that come out of someone's mouth to say, hey, Anne, could you run this report for me? This is what I need, X, Y, and Z. And if you're like, oh God, I don't even know where to start. Or if you're like, yeah, I'm excited. I cannot wait to punch these numbers and see what comes out. Like, just kind of pay attention to your body. Pay attention to see, is your body leaning into it, or is it resisting? Hopefully.
I love that. And then I love that the template you just had of the, with the columns, what you kind of fill in. Because I was just like, my calendar is just too packed. There's just too much. And I need to get out of some of these things, because I'm not the only person in the world at the company or whatever it is to do that. So I always ask myself, am I the only person that has a skill that can do this one? And then the other piece is, I'm going to use this to go back and look at my calendar every week and be like, what are the things that need to come up that I can shift to somebody else that might be better at it?
Well, and not just that, I love that. And I believe that we have the responsibility to empower others. So when I use the word delegate, that doesn't always resonate and sit well with me, because it really seems like this hierarchical delineation. And I certainly don't mean to put that out there. So to me, it's more inviting and empowering others to learn a skill set that they might be interested in doing. And you and I are in a great place in our career. We're very privileged in the things that we've been able to do. Hope you don't mind me putting you in that same classification as me. And so I am where I am truly because of the amazing mentors along my way. And if I did not have someone lean into me, pour into me, offer me the ability to try something new, to challenge me in a way that I've never been challenged, I firmly believe it is our birthright to empower other people, coach them, train them, mentor them, right? And because also I am hugely passionate about growing our next generation of nonprofit nerds. And I'm going to call you nerds because that's an endearment. So again, look at it that way. If delegation doesn't seem right, and it just really doesn't resonate with me, although I know I've used the word a lot, think of this as, how might you empower and mentor other people to gain additional resources and skill sets? Because the other thing that I always like to do when I do my executive coaching and mentorship is, where do you want to go? How can I coach and mentor you as a person, not in a title and not in a position, but you as a holistic person? And if someone says to me, I want to ask for these 6 figures, gifts, heck yeah, let's do it. Let's focus on that. And again, it's my honor to help you do that. So I'm glad you like this tool. You can easily write this down. Again, I encourage you to do it with your team. It's fantastic. Sorry, I went through this pretty quickly, but celebrate your talents. I gave you permission in the beginning. I want you to step into your awesomeness. I want you to step into your confidence. However, I can give you, that booster shot of energy and confidence to speak this, just as you did so bravely and boldly in today's conversation with your supervisor, your peers, your colleagues. It's really important. So celebrate your talents and your awesomeness. And those of you that love databases, those of you that love, organizing, like, you're my people, because I don't love to do it. So I want to find that win-win and harmonize within our team. So
love that.
For questions.
So go ahead. You can put your questions in the Q&A, but I have that good one here in the chat from Denise around any advice or a tool of how you discuss, like discussing strengths and weaknesses among co-founders.
Ooh, that's a great question. And thank you for asking that. So I do see this as a really big opportunity to really empower all of us. We all have a unique skill set, right? And again, I think where we can best talk about divvying up the responsibilities for anything, right? A co-founder is no different than a co-leader, than maybe like a job share, even looking at your team to say, okay, you are naturally, excelling in this area. I am naturally excelling in this area. How might we combine our superpowers to fulfill our mission? And I also, again, keep it positive, ask the other co-founder to identify for you, like separately. Go back to what you said. And, if there's someone here on your team, really go to them and say, like I would say to you, Anne, where do you think I excel? Like, and where do you think that I shine from these lists and my work, what I do, where do you see me light up? Because maybe we're not able to see it for ourselves because we're too close into it. So I think it's a great tool. I think it's a great tool in a partnership at home. I think it's a great tool with your children, with your family. So this is very relatable across, I think, many life spectrums.
No, I love that. I have to think about that at home. Like, just what brings me joy and what doesn't, and how can we swap maybe?
Well, I'll tell you,
Right?
I love vacuuming. I love to vacuum. Like, there's just something satisfying with vacuuming. But when it comes to like, picking up the dog stuff outside, I do not love doing that. But I'll vacuum if somebody else will do the rest. Not the rest, but other tasks.
If you had another question, Michelle's asking, kind of commenting one, I like the do more than delegate. Do you have suggestions on how to let go?
I think for me, letting go, and I always like to say, well, this is an answer shooting from the hip, but these hips have 20 years of nonprofit experience, so they're pretty seasoned, is really looking at, we're not necessarily letting go, we're inviting others to grow. We're inviting other people to grow, to expand, to learn, in this new opportunity. Now, what you could do is in this conversation, really create a framework of expectations. And so that it's not vague, it's very clear as to, this is the task. Here's a great opportunity or example that I can share. I was working with an intern, and I set up the process, the system. I told her how to do it, A through Z, and she was going to be the one to run it. But I said, here's what I came up with, for how we will do it. She stepped away from my desk. She came back in an hour and a half, and she said, I have some questions. Great, sit down, let's talk about it. She said, I don't know why we're doing it this way. Could we consider, and she told me this completely other way of how she has designed it to work. And I said, wow, I didn't even know that existed. So she brought her genius zone, her excellence, her competence to the project. I put the framework around it and said, here, go, succeed. And she came back to say, I don't get it, right? Like, I think there's a different, not a better, there's a different way to do this. And I think that's a great opportunity, is to say, this is how I see it. Our end goal is this. If you can come up with another way, I'm open to learning something that you might see as an opportunity.
I think early in my career, I received some advice like that from a founder of a company that I worked at. And he said, don't tell people how to do it. Tell them what goal you want to get to, and they will surprise you with their genius of how to get there. And I always channel that advice.
Yeah. I have to give a shout out to my buddy Chris that says, great approach, please write a book. I'll let you know when I do, and you can have the pre-sale copy, or maybe even I'll ask you to edit it before it goes to the publisher.
Let's see, I have another question here from Hee Young. What's your advice for a small org to stay genius for a long time?
What a great question. So again, the two questions: what do you love to do? What are you great at doing? And then identifying those gaps. So identifying, where are we falling short in our current team? How might we recruit volunteers, interns, board members, committee members in their zones of genius where you have that gap, right? So you identify this gap, much like Maybe, maybe we're all familiar with like a board matrix. We want to develop our board and we are missing X, Y, and Z. Perhaps you look at, we're developing our organization, we're missing X, Y, and Z. Maybe we're missing someone who's really good with numbers and accounting. Well, you want to highlight that in your recruitment. And again, it could be volunteer, it could be, a variety of ways. But I just say focus, focus, focus on who is on your team, what are their skill sets, and then identify those gaps that your organization still needs to fulfill and recruit very transparently for that.
That's great. Jarrett, do you have any tools or templates or anything that you've used around helping people do that gap analysis?
Other than, using what I've shared in today's conversation, the 2 visuals, I think you can use that to then have a conversation, further that conversation to say, do we have everything we need to fulfill our goal? And this could be organization-wide as well as department-wide. So if you're in program staff, maybe you do this in your program team, accounting similarly. And so I would then, nerd out with a huge whiteboard to say, okay, what are we missing? Just take the conversation further. And I use it in a true mastermind form where every voice matters, and you ask them, you could do it on a sticky note, index card, ask them, like, give them time to sit and think and write, and then put it up there, because everyone has an opinion and an idea. And I think once you can free flow that out there, then you can start to see the trends. And you might see from our let's say 4 people, 3 of the 4 mentioned this gap is missing. Well, that's a trend.
Yep. No, that's great. That's great. I mean, everyone is all about this today, Jarrett, and you should go write that book. And you've even confirmed for people like Craig, taking a demotion to go focus on what he loves. Like I'll be happier. My salary is a little bit less, but like probably a lot more fulfilled. Right.
Yeah. And I totally honor that. I've done that. I know it's scary. It is super scary. I'm a single mom, single income. And to me, it's really important. My why in life is freedom, flexibility, and travel. And when I was pregnant, I vowed to be the most involved parent I could possibly be. And it does mean that I say no to some really big contracts, because that quality of life and that time that I spend with my family of one, it's really important to me. So it could be a hard decision. I totally get it. And it's very doable, and it's very fulfilling knowing that you're living your life and spending your days in something that really fills you up. So kudos to you for even like having that awareness.
Yep. Life's too short. How to have fun.
We've learned that for sure.
And our time is too short with Jarrett. So I want to kind of just wrap this up, and, I'm going to just share my screen. We're going to pop open a poll really quick. If you could share with us, if you'd like more information from Jarrett, if you'd like to learn more about Bloomerang, if you're not too familiar with us and what we do and how we help organizations make the most of the donor relationship, let us know. And then I want you to mark your calendar, because we do these webinars every Thursday. And so next week, we're going to talk with Stephanie Sample about how to generate unrestricted revenue for your organization. So that's next Thursday, June 9th. And also we're doing a number of other different types of webinars and other things around nonprofit success stories. So we're going to have more on that front. So bloomerang.co/webinars-events is a great place to go keep in tune on what's next. And with that, I just want to say, thank you, Jarrett, very much. And thank you to all of our, just our whole community that was out there today, participating and engaging and sharing and being, vulnerable too. It's a community here where we can help each other and make each other stronger. So again, heartfelt thank you to everybody today. A lot of fun. And please, take care of yourself, take care of each other, stay safe, and we hope to see you again. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.